Hello everyone and welcome to another Go Toys Go program. We're going to look at some retro ads, and today's theme is going to be video games. We're going to start right off at the dawn of man, when there was only one word to describe video games, and that was Pong. Pong was the original video game. Obviously, Pong was the very simple game that was just bouncing a small square of pixels back and forth with two little lines that you controlled and moved up and down with knobs. It was basically virtual table tennis for people who didn't have the room for a table tennis machine but did have room for a full arcade cabinet. And that's what's always fascinating when you look at these really old ones, because you have to look at who they were trying to sell this to. It wasn't just something that the average Joe was going to go out and buy. This was something that more business establishments would have sitting by their entrance doors and things like that. So you can see that the features list on that's probably longer than an actual game of Pong took to play. So a very cool old ad to see, probably one of the very first video game print ads you would have ever seen. And obviously with every good idea comes evolution, so to really think outside the box with this whole video game idea, you can see that they created Barrel Pong at Atari, so something very classy apparently that you could put in your house if you were really that into Pong. But that kind of illustrates the challenge that they had, because they did kind of want to open up the market for these arcade cabinets to everyone that could afford this, and I think with this idea, this would be something that someone could put in their wine cellar, I guess. I don't know, I think it's a kind of a ridiculous piece of history there, but very, very cool to look at. They at least tried to get a little more practical with this next one. I do like this. This is the Midway Space Invaders in Cocktail Table Model. And this is a really kind of funny ad to me. I really like the cartoon of the two older gentlemen sitting there. I imagine getting ready to discuss some cocktails and destroy some space invaders together. And I imagine somewhere in a boardroom for Midway that sounded really good, but probably never actually happened in the real world. And it was kind of neat. They do throw in the stand-up Space Invaders cabinet there as well. But unfortunately, this just really wasn't practical. There wasn't a lot of people that went out of their way to go buy arcade machines, and you can see the desperation that ended up happening with the Mortal Kombat. So real it hurts. That doesn't even sound fun. They might actually want to ask Midway about some of these children getting assaulted by their machines here. But that was sort of the effect that the home gaming systems had on the arcade market. And as you can see, we might jump back in time here a little bit. This would be something you would find in a magazine from Atari. And in this ad, it boasts there's no comparing it with any other video game. And that really was true. That big old stack of games behind the Atari system was really what Atari had to boast upon. It had more games than anything else that was out there. And unfortunately, that also became kind of the downfall. There was so much overproduction, and they paid big money for licensing for games that flopped. It really almost destroyed the whole industry. So the Atari 2600 was quite a story in video games. The rise and fall, I guess you would say. So really neat to see an old ad from Atari. But despite the warnings to not get into the video game industry, not everyone listened. And I didn't put this up because this was a particularly funny ad, but you may have never heard of this monstrosity. It was called the Casiovision, and it came out a couple years before the Nintendo Entertainment System. It was surprisingly comparable due to how early it did come out, but you can see kind of the big problem with a system like this was the controllers. And the ColecoVision and another system called the Intellivision that had come out around the same time both had these big clunky keyboard controllers, and they were really awful to maneuver. I know I had one of these and tried to play it. But the other thing about this was it was really ambitious. If you look down at the bottom, you can see all the stuff. The second and third items are worth noting. The slot that you see on the front of the system actually had a couple peripherals that came with it. The second one on the ad was one that actually gave it the capability of being sort of a home PC. And the third one was the most controversial of all. That was a module that when you plugged it in allowed the ColecoVision to play Atari 2600 games, which actually at the time made the ColecoVision the largest library of games that would work on it at the time with that peripheral. So that was a very controversial thing. It would be kind of the same today if all of a sudden PlayStation put out an external disk drive that would play all of your Nintendo Wii and Xbox 360 and Xbox One games. So that would be totally unheard of these days, but actually did happen in the mid-80s with the ColecoVision. So finally, that brings us to the Nintendo, and this probably brings back memories for a lot of people. This was a typical Nintendo ad you would see in magazines, and I remember Rob the Robot in particular. You see him twice on this ad, and this guy was everywhere. He didn't come standard with the Nintendo, but he was on all of the packaging. He was only available in the upgraded, more expensive pack. And Rob the Robot only ended up having just a few games even made that would work with him, and it was so pointless and stupid that the whole idea never worked out. And it always cracked me up that he was included with all the ads and really never became included with any part of Nintendo's big history. I don't know any people that really have a working Rob the Robot still to this day. I'm sure there are. If you do, leave it on the comments. But I'm not quite done with Nintendo yet. I want to take a look at this picture. This was a Nintendo promo photo from back in the day. And at first glance, it just looks like a happy family getting ready to enjoy a night of games. But after you take a second look at it, this picture is an absolute train wreck. First off, you'll see that it's the two kids playing the game Mario Brothers, which is strangely actually sitting on the counter in front of the TV. So somehow these young men got this game to play with the game actually sitting on the counter. Secondly, I see the other young guy sitting there to the side of the TV. Now, if you've ever tried to play a game on any of these old small TVs, you'll know sitting at the side like that with a curved television screen wasn't exactly the easiest. And knowing that Mario, the way that the game worked was you didn't actually play two players at the same time like a Little Big Planet. No, you had to take turns. So I can't figure out with the picture which one of them is really playing it. But if you look at the actual gameplay, Mario is actually jumping backwards, getting ready to do a header into a big old pit. So I'm actually kind of hoping it's the kid on the side, because at least he has an excuse for doing such a poor jumping Mario maneuver there. Either way, this picture just cracks me up at every conceivable angle of it, just because of all the little things that you do pick up. I just remember even making fun of this as a kid, saying, how on earth do you play the game when it's sitting on the table? So a nice, funny, old promo picture from Nintendo. But you really do have to give Nintendo credit, because they were the ones who really did usher in the world of the gamer. And you can see here by one of their Super Nintendo ads, they really expected you to play that thing till your thumbs were blistered. So it was a really fun time for video games. And the Super Nintendo, I know a lot of people say to this day that's their favorite system, and I still have a working one up in one of my rooms going right now today. So I've always been happy with my Super Nintendo as well. So just a really cool little ad here with the blistered thumbs playing the Super Nintendo. And while it's really neat to kind of look at some of those old video game system ads, it is worth noting that you could probably make an entire episode of this based on just the games for the Nintendo Entertainment System itself. So next time we do this, we might just do that. As you can see, here's one of my favorites, Pictionary, the first NES game for any family. And you can see that's definitely any family. I don't know if my favorite on this list is Red Mohawk Guy or Grandma on the Harley, but there are a ton of crazy old Nintendo and Super Nintendo games with ads just like this. So maybe next time we will actually go in and do an entire video of just these crazy ads. So until then, I hope you enjoyed looking at some old retro video game ads with me, and next time we'll be doing something a little bit different, so hopefully you'll join us then, and goodbye.